I just wanted to continue a little bit more on the book of Hosea. And Hosea chapter 3 has a lovely, short chapter, but lovely scene. It's all about how Hosea reconciles with his wife. So he goes to the slave market, as it were, and this is what it says, really. So I bought her for 15 shekels of silver and about a homer and a lethek of barley. Then I told her, you are to live with me for many days. You must not be a prostitute or be intimate with any man, and I will live with you. And then it goes on to say in verse 4, for the Israelites will live for many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred stones, without ephod or idol. Afterwards the Israelites will return and seek the Lord their God and David their king. They will come trembling to the Lord and to his blessings in the last days. So we sometimes think about scripture, and we focus particularly in the Old Testament and the prophets on the things that Israel did wrong, and the prophets thundering against her misdemeanors and her adultery, her turning away from God, and all the things which the book of Hosea obviously really portrays very strongly. But there's a sensitive tenderness, an intimacy, a personal journey that Hosea goes on that is hard to describe. The emotional pain that you can imagine this guy went through, although it's a little bit difficult to perhaps understand that. We may have gone through pain in relationships in various ways, but I think what this guy went through was extreme. So understanding the tenderness of God and the compassion of God's heart, and the pain that his loving kindness draws her back in that way, that sort of pain that Hosea talks about in his own life and that he portrays as the Lord having for Israel, is something that we just get a picture of, but we may not be able to fully understand. Some people have been through very difficult relationship things, I understand that too, and in various different ways at different times in our life we might go through in intensity of separation, betrayal, all the brokenness that might happen in relationships. But God here demonstrates his intense love for us, his beautiful love for Israel, his redemptive love, how much God is a redeemer, how much God is one who buys back, how much God goes to the slave market, goes to the place where someone has just been traded for as goods and chattels, just a awful, dehumanizing experience, such shame. And I just want to pray actually that God would just minister to us, would really speak to us, would touch our hearts and lives where there's areas of shame, where sometimes our drifting away from God. We all have those moments, don't we, in different ways, where we feel that we've drifted from the Lord. There's shame in our lives, shame in our hearts, shame about relationships we might have engaged with, shame about things we may have done, not just relational or sexual, but in other areas that we might feel embarrassed, and just we've separated ourselves from God, and that shame sometimes is a barrier. It stops us drawing back to God, doesn't it? It stops us becoming close, and there is a definite choice here, not to be intimate with another man, not to carry on with the ways of shame, not to carry on with the ways of being distant. That's what Hosea talks to his wife about, but to be drawn back to faithfulness, to be drawn back to intimacy, to be drawn back to knowing God in this way for us and for Hosea. That's what he's talking to his wife about, this drawing back, this drawing back with cords of loving kindness, this redemptive love, this love that wins back, this love that buys back, this love that takes back. So I pray that for us, that we would enter into that whatever the shame that we may have carried, whatever the shame that we may have felt in public, whatever the brokenness that has kept us away from the Lord, whatever that has caused us to be in a place of betrayal, and even what we've hurt the Lord and we've wounded others perhaps as well in the process, that God would draw us back, that we would experience that redemptive love, that love that will not let us go, that pursues us, the good shepherd who pursues us. and looks for the lost sheep. And for those two who are prodigals, maybe they're prodigals who may see this at some point. Prodigals, by that I mean people who have felt that they've wandered off and have gone far from God. Maybe that's your experience. Maybe they're people that you're concerned about, and you find it difficult to sort of understand how they might be won back and how their life might be turned around. So we want to pray for them and for ourselves, in a sense. There's a prodigal in all of us, isn't there, in some way? So I pray that we would be drawn back, that those friends and family, relatives of ours, those that we care about who have turned away, who are in a dark place, maybe they're in some kind of slavery or addiction, maybe they're in some kind of place of shame, that they will be drawn back to the loving Father. They'll be drawn back to a redemptive experience of God, that they'll be drawn back to knowing what it is to have that intimacy with God again, that they'll be drawn back to that relationship. It's talking here in Hosea about a bridal relationship that God has with Israel, a relationship that is deep and intimate and close and unique and special, to be untampered with. And I pray that for us, that we will be pure and drawn back to Him as a real bride of Christ, as the church as well.